we will move on. Let's go ahead and do and go to the next one. So well, let's see here. I'll show first. Then I'll show the code. So it'll be easier to show the example first. Could we have it running? I went ahead and thought ahead today and actually have it running. So hopefully you can all see. You can see this very well. This is the checkbox, and this is the animation setting that I'm talking about. Now, I've had some recent conversations where I've mentioned that I think you're going to see more and more animations come around, not just because of CSS animations, but 3D interactive and things of that nature. I think animation is going to become a bigger part of UIs. But I'm not sure if you can even see it, but it does have a little bounce, and that's what the animation name is called, bounce. It has a slight bounce at the end. When it becomes checked, it bounces in and out and back is what it does. So it basically kind of bounces up and almost looks like a drop in the water. But boom, kind of like that. Bounce, and then back to normal. And you'll see how it was done. It was done, with a rather simple animation, but simple, but in my opinion, effective. And we will be taking a look at the component today and the checkbox component in BSoft components, and we will be going through the animation there because I was asked to show this. Once again, I was asked to showcase this by a viewer who said that they were currently working in React and Tailwind, and they wanted to see if I could go through how to do animations using React and Tailwind. So that we will go through that. So it will be similar to what I just showed, but this will be in more of a real world example. So let's go ahead and share the code now. So let's see here. Here we are. And we're sharing. Let's see. Let me make sure. All right, good. We are sharing. Okay, so first we'll talk about maybe we'll stay here. Tailwind has the ability to override certain settings. And to me, this is what makes Tailwind very usable, is that you can do things like adding themes and stuff like that. A lot of what you see here has the name theme on, and that's because basically that's exactly what it is. These are theme settings for the BSoft component library, allows people to define their own colors. Usually, whenever I use this, I use a color wheel. If you haven't heard of that concept before, you can search for it. There's a lot out there. Basically, you take a primary color that you want to use, and it will. You take certain. It usually has certain settings. Some of them have like just stair-step type settings. Some of them have settings where you take a color wheel and it finds other colors in a similar palette. The one I use is the stair-step setting. So it starts with a very specific color, and then it works its way down in variations of that color. And you'll see, and you saw it there when the checkbox was clicked. It was a dark blue, but the outline was a little bit lighter blue. That's a secondary color. That was actually primary 2. So that color that was used there was primary 2. So primary 1 was the actual color inside the checkbox when it was checked. Primary 2 was the color around. I don't want to go off topic though. We said we we're going to talk about keyframes. Here are keyframes. So this is the way you would do it in Tailwind. Tailwind, you would go down the path of extend. If you can see, I'm not sure if you can see down here at the bottom of my IDE. Others have asked me recently also about how great WebStorm is, and is it a really good thing to use? And I mentioned I hope they show up today. I mentioned that if you show up to my live stream, you will see me using WebStorm, and why, and hopefully you will see why I talk so highly about it. So theme extend here down here, when you're inside of a file, it will actually show you the where you are in the file. So you're within the theme, and you are extending the theme. So we're extending the basic theme, and we're adding keyframes. I recently added this one. I'll show you right here. This is one of the things I really like about WebStorm. You can show. It doesn't show the. Of course, it doesn't, because it's an addition. That's why I didn't show it. Basically, I didn't have this one here before. All I had were these 3. Tailwind would add its own 0, 100 in there, and it was causing the bounce to look a little strange. So I went ahead and added my own 0, 100 setting to start it and end it at perfect scale. Scale is how big or small it is. So if you have a scale of 1, it's exactly the same size. If you have a scale that's a little bit bigger, it gets a little bit bigger. A scale that's smaller gets a little bit smaller. So that's what's causing the bounce to happen. It's another transform we're applying. There's a number of different transforms that you can find. Scale is one of them. We just saw in the last one. What's that again? We just saw the transform was translate. There you go. It's transform translate. So there are a number of different transforms. Once again, you can go out there and look up the different types of transforms that you can do to your markup. In this case, we're using scale to simulate the bounce. So we started and ended at scale 1. We also ended here at scale 1 too. I probably honestly by now could take this out, but I'm not going to go messing with it. So what we do is when we're at halfway through the animation, we go 1.2. So we go a little bit bigger, not humongously, a little bit bigger. Then at 75%, the next 25% of the animation time, we go a little bit smaller and then back to big. So what it does, you click it, it gets bigger, smaller, and back to the regular size. So that's the bounce. It makes it look like it bounces, basically. Simple, very simple, but very effective. Hopefully you saw how effective it was when I did the text box. And then we give it an animation name. So basically, we can have a number of different keyframes if we wish. We name the keyframe here, so this is the name. So it's the same thing that we saw before with in the CSS at keyframes name. This is the same thing. Basically, you can have a number of different keyframe names and keyframe settings, and then just like before, you can actually lay out the animation and put the animation name. If you wish to modify the animation in Tailwind, you modify it here. Here, the animation plays for 0.4 of a second. So not quite half a second. I use ease in and out, much like I was doing before. I can't remember forwards. I'd have to look up which setting this was. It does have a purpose in the way it's played, I believe. And I believe that setting then has also a time setting as well. So once again, if you guys want to find out, go look up the animation setting there. It will MSDN. MSDN is probably one of the best places to do it at. You will find what you're looking for there as to all the different pieces of the animation setting. All right, hello, Code with Mantis. All right, so we will get back to the code. So that's the bounce animation. We will come. I'll quickly show how it's used over here. Where we use it over here. So basically, we are inside of the checkbox. This is the new way that I'm doing checkbox. This is the whole headless component conversion. This is where the actual checkbox input is located at. There's a number of different styles up in here. If you'll notice, I'm using you'll see this CX everywhere. What CX is, as you can tell, I don't know if you can see that, but it's called class names. That's the library that's being used. Class names is an extremely simple NPM library, but very powerful. Basically, what you can do is you can turn things on and off based upon variables within your component. So if it's read-only, we are setting these properties as our read-only. If not, then this doesn't get put into there. We have a number of different styles that are set in different places. I'm not going to go through all of that because we're talking about animation here. We're not talking about how the text box component works. But I will bring up where some of the animation is. BSC checkbox animate is what, if it's set to animate, it's turned on by passing this. And we will look at this here in just a moment and see how that is used as well. Once again, it's not going to animate to read only. If it's read only, and then you have it come up and it animates when it's read only, it looks kind of weird. That can happen. The value is first originally set. That's why animate will not, even if use animation state is on. If it's in read only a situation, we don't want the animation on when it first comes up. When it first comes up and it gets its value set, it would still pop up and down, even though it's in a read only, which would look kind of strange. So that's why it's done the way it is. So we have two settings, animate and no animate. There actually are some other settings in there in the animation that are used, hence why the no animate. And so this is where most of the animation is applied, and it's applied to the checkbox itself. And if we look where checkbox styles is, hang on, I've got to remember myself. Oh, it is. Okay, so it is actually, oh, it's in the label style. So basically for my checkbox, I'm hand drawing the checkbox, but there is a checkbox input in there to control the checking and unchecking, but it's hidden. Once again, this is about CSS animation. This is not about how to do these kind of tricks and things like that. We will get into that at a later time. If someone wants to know more about that, once again, please contact me. But you can find it. My code is available out there for everyone. You can go see it. You can go digging into the headless checkbox. That's where the magic happens currently. But we will get on to the CSS portion because that's why we came here. So quite simply put, basically, if we have when we have checkbox animate turned on, I'm trying to make sure that's the only place it is. Yep, that's it. So basically, this is the BSC checkbox animate, and it only we make sure that this is only applied when the checkbox is checked. When the checkbox is checked, because we don't want to have an animation as it's unchecking. It doesn't make a lot of sense that it's unchecking. So basically, if we want it to animate, this is what gets applied, and then it calls BSC animate bounce. This is the way that Tailwind names its animations. Now, why, you may ask, that doesn't, I don't really see why BSC. We will go back very quickly to Tailwind. If you notice here, I use a prefix. There we go. And that's where BSC on everything is coming from. The reason I do this is if anyone uses my component library and they themselves are also using Tailwind, I do not want my styles to collide with their styles. So if you put a prefix on it, all of my styles will have the prefix on it, and should not collide with any of the user styles that they are using in Tailwind themselves. That's why the prefix. That's why the BSC in front of animate bounce here. But normally, if you don't use a prefix inside of Tailwind, it would simply be animate and the name of the animation. So we'll go back one more time here. The animation name, animate with the animation name. So that's how Tailwind names its animations. Now, you don't have to do this inside of its own custom CSS. I did this because this could be done in Tailwind, but I found that some of these things, especially things like box shadow and stuff like this, some of the trickier things that I was doing, while yes, they could be done inside of Tailwind, they were quite long-winded to put in settings like this, especially settings that were as specific as this. There was no setting specific like this was for box shadow. Box shadow does have its own settings, but Tailwind, much like many other frameworks, has the most basic of styles. If you need something that's more complex, sometimes you have to do some of your own. So that's why we have a custom CSS for the checkbox to apply the more complicated settings. And while we were in here, it was just easier to go ahead. And mainly the reason that we put the animate bounce inside of here instead of inside of the component is because I wanted to make sure that it was on where an input was checked and it has an SVG, because that's what we're doing. The checkbox you see there that is actually being animated and all that is actually an SVG. That is not an actual checkbox. Like I said, that there is a valid checkbox behind there, but it's hidden. It's only used to fire the actual checking and unchecking events. So it's there for those reasons, to make sure that it works like a normal HTML checkbox. That way, if a value is set to it, the check gets set automatically, and we don't have to do by doing that, by having the HTML input, we do not have to handwrite all of that code ourselves. Why reinvent the wheel, right? The wheel's already been invented. It's already there in the checkbox. Utilize the features of it, and then just override the actual drawing of it. And that's basically what our checkbox component has done. It draws itself, but all of the actual hard work of interacting with the DOM and all of those kinds of things, instead of having to write all of that extra code ourselves, we just use the actual HTML input component set to checkbox, and utilize the checkbox features itself to then that way we can do things like this, input checked, and I can do it that simply. There are other ways to do it. I have seen component libraries that will put a like a checked data item inside of some of its markup. You can do that, and you can still. I actually did try to do that, by the way, but I found myself that it was just easier to do input checked instead of going through the process of trying to hand check this thing and put some kind of checked property in there and go down this path. And it was a nightmare. And honestly, we weren't going to get much out of it. It wasn't going to give us that much of an advantage doing it that way versus just having a hidden input, a hidden checkbox inside the component. So I'm hoping that that has wrapped up how you would create and use a CSS animation inside of Tailwind. Let's kind of bounce back over here. Let's see here. Keyframes blink. Are you asking here? I'll show this. Are you asking that or are you saying that, Bob? Here, we'll come back. I'll go ahead and stop the sharing.